Welcome back to The Source. Our next guest used to be my paper boy, believe it or not. Today, he is a university professor. I used to call him Joey Brown when he was delivering the Standard to my home. Now he's Dr. Joseph Brown, working at Innopolis University in Russia. Welcome to the program, Joe.
Thank you so much, and hi to all the viewers.
Joe, really interesting. I'd like to know, what are the differences that you're seeing in the way Russia is handling the pandemic versus the way Canada is handling the pandemic? Because I know you were home during the holidays.
I would say very early on what happened there was a complete lockdown inside of Russia. And what they did was move to declaring certain things as just like public holidays. I would say the only problem with that is that there wasn't as much government support in terms of like small businesses, individuals, etc. So, like we're so used to in the Western world, right, that the government intervenes and puts that money behind it. And there was the CERB, if I'm not mistaken, it's the acronym for it. That was not really in place here. And I think already you've got the issue in Russia that a lot of the economy is kind of underground, hand to mouth, and hidden under the table on taxes. So a lot of stuff was still happening, even though there was these types of lockdown orders in place.
What about the freedoms to move around? Can you move around in Innopolis?
Basically, my visa is a classification that allows me to move around throughout Russia. There's no major restrictions there. But what they were doing locally during the early pieces of this was you would, during the lockdown period of that 2-month period, you had to basically send a text out to say, hey, I'm going to the store, or hey, I'm going to wherever I'm headed, if it was outside of what was allowed in the local area. And those were generally granted. I don't think there was that many that were denied, from my understanding.
As a Canadian, you have to carry that visa with you when you go out for groceries?
I normally have to carry my passport with me because I am in a foreign country. So I am required to carry that through just normal interactions.
How are people surviving in Russia if there is not a lot of government support for their incomes?
I mean, this is going back, they went through the 1990s and the issues that happened inside of that period. So I think a lot of my, the sentiment that I kind of got from my Russian colleagues was basically they were going back to that period for a while. So there is this kind of, underground type of movement through that. They understand how to deal with that kind of level of privation. But I think the bigger issue, and I think this is something that we're not really thinking about, is like personal protective equipment and what's happening there. If you look at, for example, masks, like to us, great, okay, I can get a disposable, I can get a renewable. There was huge issues here with tuberculosis in certain areas because people were not washing, masks, or weren't able to afford or have access to just disposables and doing that sort of hygiene, because they don't have the money to purchase another mask.
Are some of those issues now clearing up 10 months later?
They are definitely starting to clear up. I think a lot of it was kind of dealt with within that first couple of months of the pandemic. But I mean, this is an ongoing situation, and I'm kind of on the other side of this too, right? I'm in this. I'm locally rich, so it's not something that I would normally see in my daily interactions. But I think there is a lot of these types of issues going on, and we can see that in the numbers.
Just for point of clarity, you are at a university, Innopolis University. It's a high-tech university focusing on computer science-related courses. And
Yes.
it is also sort of a made-up community. The community was made to surround the university.
This is very similar to kind of the development projects that we've seen in a bunch of different nations, where they've basically gone in and tried to build the community around a high-tech university. We've seen this development kind of naturally out of Silicon Valley, where it had the university resources out of California. We saw this in like the Waterloo and the attempt to do that with Research in Motion. And, there was the whole debacle that came after that. But there is these types of developments that are happening around the world where they're basically going in and trying to kind of have the universities feed into local infrastructure and IT.